In the heart of the galaxy, on a vast station known as the Halo of Accord, representatives of over 300 intelligent species gathered under one shining dome of silver glass and swirling lights. This was the seat of the Galactic Accord, where decisions of war and peace were made, where alliances rose and fell, and where power was measured not only in fleets, but in fear. The hall hummed with the sound of alien tongues, blinking holograms, and rows of tall banners bearing the emblems of proud civilizations. On this day, a new banner appeared among them, plain gray, marked with a single symbol, Earth. Humanity had been granted observer status for the first time, after decades of petitioning and centuries of being ignored. When the human delegation entered the chamber, they came with no fanfare, no music, no show of strength. 3 delegates, dressed in modest gray uniforms with no weapons, no medals, and no escorts, walked quietly to their assigned seats. Their leader, a middle-aged man named Elias Tyran, carried only a datapad and a calm expression. He greeted those around him politely, nodded to those who made eye contact, and listened carefully to every voice that spoke. His face did not flinch. When the Zentari warlord rose from his gleaming throne and addressed the hall with loud, echoing laughter. "At last," the warlord bellowed, "the sheep have arrived among wolves. Tell me, Earthling, did you bring a prayer, or did you forget how small your home is?" Laughter rippled through some of the nearby seats, especially those of warlike races who viewed Earth as a quiet backwater, too new to matter and too weak to challenge anyone. But Elias did not respond with anger or shame. He smiled gently, bowed his head slightly, and typed a few notes into his pad. He neither argued nor explained. He simply listened. For hours, the debates continued. Matters of trade routes, pirate threats, and weapon regulations were raised, while other delegates shouted and pointed fingers. The human trio remained silent, always watching, always recording. Every insult, every glance, every boast was quietly noted. They asked no questions. They offered no demands. A few curious species wondered why the humans had bothered attending if they planned to stay so still. The answer, if anyone had looked closely, was in their eyes. They were not there to boast. They were there to learn, to study, to understand the patterns of arrogance and the blind spots of empires. Later, when most of the powerful races retired to private lounges filled with smoke, drink, and mutual praise, Elias sat by the edge of the observation deck, overlooking the stars. Behind him, the other 2 humans quietly discussed data transmission, frequencies and security flaws they had already spotted in the Council's communication networks. One of them had even mapped the station's internal layout, marking blind corners, hidden doors, and shadowed alcoves. These were not tourists. They were scouts. And still they smiled. Somewhere far below the council chamber, deep in the gravity-wrapped core of the station, an ancient listening probe activated for the first time in decades. It received a narrow beam message, so small that most sensors would ignore it as cosmic noise. The message originated from Earth's high orbital defense net, sent through quantum keys and encrypted lattice codes known only to a few, Elias's. Datapad vibrated once. He opened it, read a single line, and then placed the device back into his pocket without changing expression. The message was simple. Just 5 words. Operation Veilfall is now approved. No lights blinked, no alarm sounded. But something had changed. Somewhere in the shadows of the galaxy, ships that had never shown themselves began to turn. Old satellites, thought dead, began pulsing faint lights into dark space. Invisible constructs near trade routes powered on, gently realigning microscopic mirrors. The humans said nothing. They only watched, because humanity had never come to beg for acceptance. They had come to understand the game before revealing they had always known how to play it better than anyone expected. The Galactic Council would go to sleep that night, believing nothing had changed. But Earth, once mocked, once ignored, had just moved its first piece on a much larger board, and no one in that grand chamber had seen it coming. Days passed after the quiet approval of Operation Veilfall, and the Galactic Accord continued its work as usual, completely unaware that the air had changed softly, silently, like the calm before a storm that hadn't been predicted. The human envoys returned to the council chambers each morning, calm as ever, listening, watching, speaking only when addressed, and even then offering brief answers. The other species still mocked them. Some saw them as too peaceful to be taken seriously, others as too backward to matter. Warlord Krex of the Centauri Empire, known for testing the limits of diplomacy, decided to take a bold step. In the border zone near the Delcan Rim, an isolated region with thin patrols, he ordered a Centauri scout frigate to pass dangerously close to a human listening station known as Harmony Post. The outpost, small and unmanned except for a basic AI and a few civilian scientists, did not respond to warnings. Krex ordered a test strike, just one rail shot to remind the sheep who holds the leash. The shot hit, destroying the relay tower and sending out a small burst of debris and signal static. The Centauri fleet laughed, the warlord included. Earth did not respond. There were no threats, no declarations, no mobilization. It appeared that the humans had simply absorbed the blow. In the Galactic Accord chamber the next day, Elias Tyran made no mention of it. He smiled gently, as always, and took notes. The other delegates whispered, some amused, others puzzled. But far away, in the cold silence beyond charted space, something shifted. Earth's older satellites, buried deep in the Oort cloud, began transmitting ancient codes. Listening posts from Luna to Ceres reactivated. Deep under the Pacific Ocean, a dormant system known only as Aegis Chain began to hum quietly. Within 2 hours of the Harmony Post strike, Earth's orbital stations redirected data to a hidden relay station at L5, which then sent a tight beam message beyond Sol's Edge to a location that didn't exist on any official map. There, in the hollow shell of an asteroid, painted black as the void, humanity's ghost fleet began to wake. These were not ships of pride and ceremony. These were the ships no one had seen. No engines flared. No names were printed on hulls. They moved with no sound, no lights, only intent. Project Veilfall had begun 30 years ago, when Earth realized it was being watched but not respected. Quiet funding, secret construction, and silent launches built a fleet not meant to be shown but to be used if ever the galaxy crossed the line. The loss of Harmony Post was not just a poke. It was the trigger Earth had been waiting for. As human diplomats smiled across tables and nodded through insults, black ships moved into place. Their shields were invisible. Their drives left no trace. They carried no symbols, no national colors, only commands and purpose. In the outer rim, a Centauri patrol cruiser vanished. The ship sent no distress, no last message. Its final image, recorded by a passing mining drone, showed the cruiser intact, then suddenly dark, drifting, powerless. No explosion. No escape. Pods, just silence. The Centauri believed it to be a systems failure. They sent another ship. It vanished too. Panic did not spread right away, but concern did. Still, the Council said nothing. Krex mocked the reports, saying human tech must be so old it interferes with nearby systems. He suggested humans were sabotaging themselves. That evening, in a distant part of the galaxy, an old AI listening post from the pre-Accord days blinked to life and began transmitting in a human encryption code never seen before by alien systems. The data spread across human channels like wildfire, pinging hidden bases, lost satellites, and hibernating drones. These were not just responses, they were instructions, coordinates lit up on secret maps. Phase 2 was ready. On board the Eclipse Lancer, a ship cloaked within the folds of a moon's magnetic field, Commander Rhea Solis received the go order. Her voice, calm and precise, gave the signal. Drones deployed across 3 systems. Observation nodes recorded. Centauri fleet formations, patrol shifts, and energy patterns. Within 12 hours, humanity knew everything they needed to know. And Earth still said nothing. In the council, Elias took his seat as usual. This time, he carried no datapad. He listened to a debate about new laws concerning military patrols and hyperspace lanes, where the Centauri pushed to expand their allowed movement. When Elias was asked for his opinion, he simply replied, "We trust the Accord to maintain fairness." No one noticed that his words, this time, were not recorded. He wasn't taking notes. He was done learning. That night, the Andromedus, a Centauri command vessel, en route to a base near the edge of human territory, received a strange signal. A small human message with no encryption and no attached data, just coordinates and a timer. The captain ignored it. 1 hour later, their engines failed, weapons froze, and their systems rebooted into human code. They drifted in silence, surrounded by 3 invisible objects, never fired upon, but utterly helpless. Then, all 3 objects vanished as suddenly as they had arrived. The message had been a test. And now, Earth had all the answers they needed. The galaxy didn't know it yet, but the game had changed. Humanity was not the weak player everyone believed. They had simply been silent, and silence was now over. The whispers began in the outer systems, soft at first, like passing rumors among traders and mercenaries who had no reason to fear Earth, but could no longer ignore the strange reports. Ships spoke of ghostly silhouettes slipping between asteroid belts without setting off any scanners. Fleets reported energy fluctuations that disabled power systems for seconds, just long enough to realize their weapons had been moved or removed. Captains of respected empires returned from patrols with nervous eyes, unable to explain why one of their cruisers had disappeared in a region previously considered safe. And slowly, fear began to replace the laughter. Still, no proof existed. No transmission from Earth claimed responsibility. No weapons had been officially fired. But something was happening in the dark. Council surveillance networks picked up brief flashes of unknown heat signatures that came and went in patterns too precise to be natural. Ships began finding traces of interference in their jump drives minor, barely enough to notice, yet, when analyzed, they all pointed back to Earth-coded algorithms buried deep beneath layers of neutral software. The Centauri Empire, desperate to maintain its show of control, deployed a full battle group to the edge of human sectors. Their ships were massive, glittering with energy lances and heavy armor. Warlord Krex himself joined the mission aboard. His dreadnought, Bloodthirst. He announced to the Accord that he would investigate the human borders for security purposes. The Council allowed it, thinking Earth too silent to protest. But Earth did not protest. It simply waited. The Centauri fleet entered Sector 9A, once known to humans as the Phoenix Expanse, and encountered no resistance. But the moment they crossed into the boundary zone, their navigation systems began to blink strangely. Star maps shifted by fractions of a degree. Beacons that once marked travel lanes were gone. Communications became filled with soft static that hummed in low, strange rhythms. They thought it was natural interference until the Bloodthirst received a message. No visual, no sound. Just text in clear Centauri script, "You are not unseen." Krex scoffed, thinking it a bluff. He ordered a wide area scan. It revealed nothing. Then he ordered a probe to launch. It never reported back. The admiral on his left began to worry, asking if this was some kind of Earth trick. Krex silenced him with a growl. That's when the stars began to blink. At first, it was barely noticeable, one star here, another there, simply vanishing from view for a second. But then more followed. Patterns of light in the sky were changing, and the Centauri ship's own systems began reporting false locations. Something was distorting the region around them. One by one, the ships lost external sensors. No enemy ships could be seen. No weapons had been fired. But the fleet was being surrounded by something. In the command chambers of Earth's deep space, Defense Council, a woman named Admiral Halley watched quietly as data streamed in. Phase 3 has begun, she whispered, and across hidden bases and silent moons, Earth's ghost network came alive. The galaxy had built weapons of fire and fury, giant cruisers and laser towers. Earth had built something else, control. They had spent years hacking, mapping, and embedding their code into neutral tech. They knew which frequencies to block, which sensors to twist, which engines to confuse. They didn't need bigger guns, they had silence. And they were using it now. Back in the council chambers, Elias Tianes asked about the Centauri fleet's progress. He smiled politely and said, "I believe they'll return shortly." No one believed him. But in space, the Centauri were panicking. Their ships were moving, in circles, blind to everything around them. Some began firing at shadows, only to hit their own companions. The Bloodthirst launched a distress signal. It was answered by a calm voice speaking Centauri, but in a human tone. "This is Earth. We do not seek war. But you have entered our sky. You may turn around now, or drift here forever." Krex, angry and afraid, ordered an all-ship charge. The moment his fleet moved, their engines cut out entirely. One by one, they floated helplessly, as cloaked drones the size of fighters drifted between them, each unarmed, but blinking with thousands of scanning lights. They recorded everything, then vanished. 10 minutes later, every Centauri ship reactivated except the Bloodthirst. That dreadnought never returned. When the remaining ships jumped back to neutral space, their systems were empty. All logs deleted, all weapons offline. And yet, no one had died. The message was clear. Earth did not need to kill to make a point. The Accord erupted into chaos. When word spread, some delegates refused to believe it. Others demanded answers. Krex's disappearance was labeled an internal matter. Still, no accusation could be proven. Earth had never fired a shot. But the galaxy had seen enough. Fear had replaced mockery. And still, the humans smiled. The quiet ones, the patient ones, watching from the shadows and letting their silence speak louder than any threat. The stars had barely returned to normal. Across Sector 9A, when the rest of the galaxy started to change, trade ships began refusing routes near human territory. Mercenaries, once bold and loud, now hesitated to take contracts that involved Earth's outer colonies. Reports came from all corners of space fleets experiencing power glitches, weapons, locking up for no reason, ships arriving at wrong destinations because of strange jumps. And behind it all, one name kept surfacing in whispers. Earth, the once dismissed species, was now a ghostly power. Yet not a single shot had been fired publicly. No planet had fallen. No war had begun. It was the fear of the unknown that shook the galaxy. Earth's silence had turned into a presence that was everywhere and nowhere. But the fear truly took shape on what history would remember as the day the sky burned. The Centauri Dominion, an empire known for its massive warships and overconfidence, declared that Earth's silence was a bluff. Led by the proud Admiral Syrinx, they gathered a battle fleet of over 1,000 ships, destroyers, frigates, carriers, and cruisers, and moved them towards Sector 12, a neutral border zone close to a human research outpost on a moon called Thalo 7. Their plan was simple: park their fleet there, establish a temporary base, and force Earth to respond. "Let us see if the sheep still smile," Syrinx said, before launching the operation. The fleet entered Thalo 7's orbit with banners raised and engines roaring. Alien journalists followed closely, hoping to catch Earth's reaction. At first, there was none. Earth's outpost on the moon sent no warning, no complaint. The Centauri fleet broadcasted an open challenge to all nearby systems. Humanity is welcome to speak now, or stay silent forever. Then the sky changed. Without warning, the stars above Thalo 7 dimmed, not because of clouds or storms, but because something was blocking them. Massive objects began to appear in orbit, uncloaking one by one. They made no sound, but their size was beyond anything the Centauri had seen. These were not normal warships, they were fortress ships, black as the void, built for endurance and command. They bore no names, no lights, and no flags. They simply hovered, watching. Syrinx laughed at first, thinking, "It a trick." He ordered a scan. The results came back scrambled. Their sensors couldn't get a lock. The fortress ships returned no signal, no ID, and yet showed weapon arrays unlike anything in known archives. Syrinx gave the order to fire a warning shot. A beam of white-hot energy struck one of the dark ships directly only, to vanish into a ripple of blue light. No damage. No reaction. Then the human ships responded. Not with fire, but with presence. Hundreds of smaller vessels appeared all around the Centauri fleet. Tiny, almost invisible craft, like stars that had suddenly come alive. They surrounded every Centauri ship, not attacking, just watching, scanning, waiting. Syrinx panicked. He ordered full shields and standby weapons. But before they could act, the human ships moved, not toward them, but through them. Imperfect. Silence, they phased in and out of position, weaving between ships as if gravity and time were nothing. The Centauri computers froze. The AI locked. Alarms sounded across the fleet. Then, just as quickly, everything stopped. All Centauri ships lost control at once. Engines shut down. Weapons powered off. External comms went dead. Every screen now displayed the same message. "This is your only lesson. Return or be erased." Syrinx screamed for overrides. None worked. The galaxy watched, stunned, as the most powerful fleet in Centauri history floated helplessly under the gaze of unmoving human giants. And then, as silently as they came, the human ships vanished. The stars returned. Power returned. But the lesson stayed. Syrinx ordered immediate retreat. Half his fleet barely made the jump. The rest limped away with frozen systems, their data wiped clean. Not a single Centauri soldier was harmed, but every one of them left knowing they had lost a battle they never got to fight. Back in the Galactic Accord, silence filled the hall. No one spoke when Elias Tian returned to his seat, calm as ever. His gray uniform was the same, his expression peaceful. But now no one laughed. He looked around the chamber, meeting every eye, then said only this: "We seek peace, always have, but never mistake peace for weakness." The room remained quiet for several seconds, before the chair of the Accord nodded slowly and moved on to the next topic. But everyone knew things had changed. Earth had never fired first. Asterisk. They had simply made it clear there would be no second time. And somewhere in the vast dark beyond the maps, Earth's real fleet returned to the shadows once more, ready but hidden. The sky, once safe and open, now belonged to someone else. The ones who were mocked, the ones who had waited, and the ones who had just shown the galaxy what true military power looked like. The galaxy no longer slept the way it once had. After the day the Centauri fleet was quietly dismantled without a single explosion, everything changed. Delegates from once proud empires now walked softly in the corridors of the Galactic Accord. Where there had been loud laughter and arrogant speeches, there was now quiet nodding and careful words. No one dared to mock Earth anymore. Their strength had not come from flashy ships or loud declarations, but from silence, strategy, and perfect control. Still, Earth made no demands. No territories were claimed. No punishments were asked for. Instead, Elias Tiarn requested only one thing: a new peace charter. It was a simple document, just 5 pages long, calling for the protection of neutral space, the defense of smaller species, and an end to military intimidation through presence. Some empires hesitated, especially the Centauri and the few allies left of the Centauri Dominion, but none were bold enough to say no, not after what had happened. And so the charter passed, signed by all 314 member species. For the first time in galactic history, Earth had not only been accepted, they had become a guiding voice. Yet beneath the surface of diplomacy and order, rumors still stirred. Whispers of other human fleets watching from the edge of star systems, of probes appearing then vanishing near forbidden planets. Some claimed that the humans had weapons hidden inside moons, cloaked cities orbiting black holes, and drones older than some civilizations quietly listening from gas giants. No one could prove it, but no one tried to find out. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Peace had a price, and Earth had paid it in patience, silence, and readiness. Still, many wondered why. Had humanity waited so long? Why hadn't they shown their strength earlier, when they were mocked, pushed, even struck? The answer came from a quiet speech made by Elias Tiarn during the next session of the Accord. He stood alone, hands behind his back, and addressed the chamber with the same calm voice he had always used. Many of you ask why we hid, why we let ourselves be insulted, ignored, pushed aside. The truth is, we were never hiding. We were healing. We were building. We were learning. Not just about you, but about ourselves. Long ago, Earth tore itself apart in wars so terrible that we almost ended before we began. When we reached the stars, we promised each other we would never again let pride come before peace. That is why we walked in silence, while others shouted. That is why we smiled, while others threatened. And that is why, even now, we will not punish, even though we could. His words echoed through the vast chamber, not with power, but with wait. No applause followed, just silence. The kind of silence that comes when everyone knows the truth has been spoken. After that, a slow change began to spread. Small species, long ignored, began to speak louder. Trade laws became more fair. Patrol zones shrank. Warlords lost influence. And behind all of it stood Earth, not ruling, not controlling, but watching, always ready to act if needed. Still, the galaxy was vast, and not all threats came from within. In the far edge of known space, near the ancient remnants of the Volcari expanse, a dark signal was detected. No known language, no known code, but it pulsed with power and purpose. The could not decode it, but Earth did. Within hours of its discovery, a message was sent from Earth's deep black command, a single line. We've seen this before. Without waiting for permission, Earth launched a small task force of cloaked ships toward the signal's origin. When questioned by the Accord, Elias said only, "Some threats are better handled before they wake." And so, the galaxy watched. Again, as the humans moved through space like wind, silent and unstoppable. Weeks passed. The signal vanished. Earth returned with no report, no damage, no explanation. But in the systems nearby, the stars grew brighter, as if relieved. The message was clear once more. Earth was not a conqueror. Earth was a guardian, not because they wanted power, but because they knew what happened when power went unchecked. In time, the Accord built a new wing in its archives, named the Veilfall Records, where the events of humanity's rise were preserved not just as warning, but as wisdom. Children from dozens of species studied those records, reading about the people who once walked quietly and turned the sky to fire only when peace had been threatened too many times. And among those records was a final note, handwritten by Elias before he left the Accord for the last time. It read, "Strength is not what you show when others are watching. It is what you hold back when no one expects you to." The galaxy never forgot. And though new threats would one day rise, and new leaders would come and go, the stars themselves seemed to remember the day humanity smiled, and the sky burned in silence